Okay, and by my clock, it's the top of the hour, so let's go ahead and get our webinar started for today. First, I want to thank everyone for making plans to attend this. This is the last NMA Live Online webinar of the year, and soon we'll be starting to post some dates and subjects for 2018, so keep your eyes open for that. Today's webinar is going to be facilitated by Lynn Schneider, CN, CPCM, who is a member of the Boeing Space Launch System Finance Organization in Huntsville, Alabama. She started her career at Boeing in 2004, providing contract support for the AC-130U gunship program in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. And today, she's the lead contract representative for both the avionics and software and exploration upper stage teams. She started her career with NMA about a year later, the Boeing Fort Walton Beach Leadership Association. She served as a committee chair, officer, and chapter president. And the Boeing Rocket City Leadership Association just celebrated its 1-year anniversary last month, and Lynn will be serving her first time on the National NMA Board of Directors starting this January. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn the floor over to her and let her begin her presentation. Lynn?
Good morning and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming and spending some time with me. The first slide that you will see after the presentation slide, you should see pictures of me. And a lot of times people think, contracts, what in the world could they have to say about leadership? Or, oh my goodness, a bean counter. We can't possibly keep ourselves engaged and participating for a full hour with someone from contracts. But I wanted to give you a little picture of who I am. And in the top left corner, you'll see a picture just recently taken at Neuschwanstein Castle near, I guess it's south of Munich. And that's my husband, Mark. He is the love of my life. In the right corner, you'll see my family, my daughter, son-in-law, and my 2 grandkids. But then the bottom 2 pictures, I think you'll get a glimpse of who I really am. That is me scuba diving, and on the right-hand side, paragliding in the Bavarian Alps. And that, I hope, will demonstrate to you how much I love adventure, how much I enjoy a challenge. And I might be just a tad crazy because I really did run off a perfectly good mountain, and that is me soaring at about 3,000 meters. And so it just absolutely goes to show that one of my #1 leadership skills and attributes that I hope you will look for in yourself and in others is a spirit of adventure and maybe a little bit of risk taking. Now that emblem in the middle, that is the logo, the branding for Church of the Highlands. And the reason that I put that there is because I am a person of faith, and much like one of my heroes, John Maxwell, it's an integral part of who I am. And so I always put that in the center of who I am because it's really the hallmark of how I do business and some of the guiding leadership principles that I've honed over the years. So are you guys ready? I'm assuming yes, because I know that Aiden's doing a tremendous job with the mute buttons, and we'll have some time to interact in just a few minutes. But if we'll go to the next slide, I can tell you that we're going to follow a roadmap, and it's going to be about leading, then following, and then for some of us, we just need to get out of the way, or we need to think about the people on our teams or in our relationships that are roadblocks for us and how we can manage those more carefully in the coming days. So what I'd like you to do is take a look at that next slide. And I'm going to give you a moment to just ponder those. Do you recognize any of those companies? If you're much of a television or a radio person, you certainly might. And I'll spare you singing any of the jingles. But that first one, Have It Your Way, do you know it? If you said Burger King, you're right. How about the next one? Who are my coffee drinkers out there? Anybody from the Port of Seattle on the call today? That one's Nescafe, and I grant you that that might not be considered coffee in some circles, but it's all about you. Then finally, you're worth it. And the last one's from Audi. How about this? Never follow. Are you picking up a common theme? Think about it for a few minutes, maybe a few seconds. If you said selfish, introspective, self-serving, a certain attitude, I think you would be correct. And it's my belief, though, that none of you are any of those things. And here's why. Because you're investing your time today to learn something new about leadership. You're willing to take a chance, invest an hour of your time to hear somebody that you've never met and give me a chance to explain what I think about leadership. One thing I know is that great leaders are not known by any of the attributes that I just read to you. In fact, I would go so far as to say that true leadership is actually countercultural. And we're going to be talking more about that in just a little while. So as I mentioned today, I do want to invite you into a conversation. And if you're in a room with other folks, I'm going to invite you to talk amongst yourselves, and we'll have some time on the open mic where we can share ideas across the chapters and the folks that are participating. But I want you to be thinking about your role in the leadership equation. So here's my hypothesis. Each of us in our daily lives shifts between roles throughout the day. So for example, you might start the day leading. Then you'll move into a meeting where you're clearly a contributor or a follower. And then in some instances, based on the circumstances, you might actually be in the way. So my objective in the next 45 minutes or so is to introduce you to some of the great leaders in my life. I want to give you my point of view, but really what I want to do is challenge you, challenge your way of thinking, and then leave you with some action steps that you can take right now within the context of lead, follow, or get out of the way. So let's go back to those slogans. To me, the slogans really demonstrate where we are in our culture, where we are in history. And the emphasis is on me. Even if, for example, Burger King, it's have it your way, that's like a customer experience kind of idea, but it's not necessarily one that lends itself to what would the other person prefer. So where we are today culturally in this time where technology lends itself to isolation, you don't even have to leave your house to go to the grocery store anymore, where communication is often made in sound bites or in a certain community, emojis. You can have a complete conversation without using words, just simply by expressing yourself through emojis. So think about this as we delve into this topic of lead, follow, or get out of the way. How in the world, in this time, are we going to influence our families, our coworkers, our communities? How are we going to lead in the workplace if we have a bunch of self-centered people out there? Have you thought about that? Those of you that are in a certain demographic age-wise, you might be simply focused on where you're going in the next 2 to 3 to 5 years. And so you're not thinking about the legacy you're leaving behind us. But I would like to introduce you to some great leaders, because I think it's through studying great leaders that we can influence the generation behind us. We can replicate what those great leaders are doing. We can define our own leadership style by understanding what we value in others, all the while just being who we are. So the next slide you should see are some great leaders in my life. I had to think about this. I had to prepare for this meeting to understand who I wanted to introduce you to, not only myself and my family, but leaders that have influenced me. So let me introduce you to Chris Mannion on the left. Ken Hill is there in the center, and then Chris Hodges is the guy on the right-hand side. Now, Chris Mannion has the best laugh you have ever heard. Have any of you ever been out to a park with your kids or your grandkids or just out for a walk and you've seen an angry goose? Do you know what that honking sound is that they make? That's what Chris Mannion's laugh is like. She spent the better part of her professional career in direct sales. Have you heard of the Pampered Chef? Who are my gourmet foodies out there? You know the Pampered Chef. It's kitchen tools. They are not gadgets. Are you thinking, what could you learn from her? What could Lynn have possibly learned from Chris? Do you have some stereotypes about direct sales? Do you have any personal bias about who you're willing to listen to when it comes to leadership? Well, let me tell you a little bit more about Chris. She's actually an award-winning entrepreneur, a catechist, and an author. She grew her Pampered Chef business to over 4,000 consultants with sales of greater than $1 million annually. Now, do you think you could learn something from leadership or about leadership from Chris now? But Chris retired from the Pampered Chef in 2013 with a full retirement. And let me tell you what the Pampered Chef retirement looks like in case any of you are looking for a second career. When you move up in their organization, they retire with 10 years of the highest salary earned for 10 years. That's it. That's what they get. And so she grew her organization. She demonstrated capacity. And right now she's working on children's books and a collection of poetry. She's published a book, and her book is essentially about or for people who know that there's more to life than what they're currently experiencing. See, I think you called in today because you think there's something more as well. And you think, like I do, and like Steve and the other folks in the NMA chapters across the U.S., that there's something more. There's something greater to be experienced within the context of leadership. Chris is really an incredible photographer. She plays the cello. She enjoys her children and grandchildren. She lives on the Gulf Coast of Florida, and she's been married for over 40 years. See, I think there's a lot we can learn from Chris. But here's the personal experience that I had with her. When I was back in Florida, I wanted to have a Pampered Chef party. It's not that exciting. It's not that big a deal. I love the products. I used to sell Pampered Chef to support my Longaberger habit. Any of you in Ohio certainly know the Longaberger name. But I wanted to do it my way. So I contacted the Pampered Chef website and I sent in a request, please have a consultant contact me. Well, listen to these leadership attributes she did in one phone call. She called me within 24 hours of the request. She was timely. She listened to what my needs were. She understood I had interest. She understood I had a problem, and she understood I was willing to make an investment in her if she would invest in me. Then Chris asked some questions. She evaluated her understanding of my need by asking questions. Then she did something really incredible. She took a chance on meeting me. And this is why it was a big chance. I didn't want her to come do a Pampered Chef party at my house. I wanted her to give me the most current Pampered Chef product so that I could have a Pampered Chef party with all of my friends and all of her stuff. And all I wanted her to do was say okay to that. Well, in fact, we met at the beach one Saturday, and she might have been feeling better about her risk-taking when she saw the gourmet spread of brunch laid out on a picnic table with real china, real cloth napkins, and maybe a nice bottle of champagne chilled to just the right degree of temperature. But she took a chance. She was willing to take a little bit of a risk. So as you think about the great leaders in your life, can you link those leadership attributes that you admire to the people and to the experiences that you have in front of you? Can you think about those intersections in time where you met the great leader and how those relationships continue to grow? Now, I'm very intentional about that relationship word because of the relationship that I developed with Chris. I was able to have candid conversations with her about my Boeing career. I was able to have candid conversations with her about planning whether I would stay or leave the Boeing company. Now, speaking of Boeing, I'd like you to meet Ken Hill. Ken Hill is the Vice President and Program Manager of the Integrated Weapons System Support Program, affectionately known as IWISP. It sounded like we had a list, but we didn't. It was those gunships that really keep America safe and the guys and gals on the ground when they're out in deployed situations. So this is how I met Ken Hill. I dialed the wrong number. Does anything like that ever happen to you? I dialed the number of his office administrator, I thought, but the phone was answered and the voice said, "Ken Hill, can I help you?" I was horrified. I was a level 2 contracts person and I just dialed the wrong number. And I said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Hill. I was trying to reach Kelly. I apologize for intruding. Please forgive me." And he said, "No, who is this?" And I had to answer. And he said, "What do you do for me?" And I had to answer. And he said, "Where do you sit?" Well, I was on the 4th floor, right below his office. And he said, "Why don't you come up here? I'd like to meet you." Now think about that. What leadership attributes did Ken Hill just demonstrate? Talk about that for just a moment. You see, his interest in me as a person and his unwillingness to simply dismiss an accidental intersection really made a difference to me. I did go upstairs and I did meet Ken Hill. I later got to work closely with him on some projects. But when it was time for me to make a decision about my career, Ken Hill is the person who would not stand in the way of a promotion because a program manager locally wanted to retain me. That program manager said, I went to Ken and said, "Let's throw a promotion Lynn's way and keep her here." But Ken Hill said, "No, we were going to get out of the way and let Lynn move forward with her career. She has more to offer the Boeing company than she can accomplish here. She needs to be in a bigger pond." So did you catch that leadership attribute? It's letting go. I think sometimes we don't think about that from a leadership point of view, but it's about letting go. Now, Chris Mannion and Ken Hill, I personally know. I have their cell phone numbers. I stay in touch with them to this very day. But this last guy, Chris Hodges, he's the senior pastor of Church of the Highlands. And again, this is not about my faith, but it's about his leadership style. Let me give you some of those attributes. Clear and focused, based on equipping people to achieve their best for a greater purpose. Are those qualities you want to emulate in your leadership style? They certainly are for me. But this is what's really exciting. Chris is willing to provide those at Highlands with opportunities to pursue their purpose. So here's an example. There was a person at Highlands who felt called to the prison ministry. Now I get it, that's very controversial. We could have a whole nother weekend retreat on just that topic. But Chris believes that when you have a purpose and you have the capacity or the bandwidth or the capability or someone who's advocating for you to go do that which you're called to do, then really incredible, amazing things happen. See, this was not going to be a project. It was going to be people who were called, who were equipped, who were designed to work with people that were incarcerated to go do something specific. in the Alabama Department of Corrections. Now, there were going to be training requirements. There were going to have to be agreements in place. But listen what's happened in about 6 years' time. Highlands has been authorized to access 15 different facilities across the Alabama Department of Corrections. It's amazing. But listen to this. The success of what's happening through that situation has caught the attention of the current presidential administration. And guess what? Trump's administration called because this visionary was equipped by a leader who supported them for success. And that's really, I think, where we all want to go, is we want to take leadership principles, employ them, and then see them making a difference. See, this situation, this ministry, if you will, the outcomes are so different, so positive, that the administration wants to replicate the model in other states. Isn't that an incredible success story? So let's talk about those leadership attributes again. Give each person an opportunity. Who are the people in your sphere of influence that you can give them an opportunity? Understand areas of excellence. Can you see the potential that some people can't even see in themselves? To encourage taking next steps. See, I'm going to leave you with some next steps before we close today, because I don't want you to have wasted this time. I want you to leave equipped, better able to do something different so that you can make a difference too. And for Chris Hodges, it's not only making a difference locally, but it's nationally and globally through the things that are happening at Highlands. So these are influential leaders in my life, and they continue to influence my leadership style. And that's the roadmap that gets us to lead, follow, or get out of the way. So let's pause. Talk for a moment about what you're looking for in a leader. And in just a moment, I think Aiden's going to open up those mics so we can hear what you're looking for. And Steve Bailey, you pay close attention, because this might help with some seminar breakout sessions for the 2018 conference. So talk amongst yourselves in that group setting. What are you looking for in a leader? And Aiden, when you're ready, open up the mic and let's hear what the people have to say.
Okay, I'll give everybody about a minute or so to talk amongst themselves, and then we'll open the mics up. All right.
Okay, do we have some? There we go. Thanks, Aiden.
Open the microphones here, so pause your side conversations, and if anyone has anything that they would like to share, they can do so at this time.
Here, I think, I don't know.
Okay, the mics are open.
I don't know if we can. We don't have a mic down here. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, nobody has any comments?
Can't figure out how to work it.
Hey Lynn, this is Karen calling from New Orleans at the Chapter 555. And in our discussion here, I think we were talking about having a good listener, somebody that listens and carefully listens and hears you, here's what you're saying, and offers suggestions on how to move forward. In addition, I was thinking, I didn't get to bring it out because our conversation ended kind of quickly, but freedom freedom to, trust, I guess, is what the attribute would be. Trusting you to go forward and do your thing, and even if you make a mistake, accepting that and showing you how to move forward and get over that and move on.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a great response.
Anyone else?
This is Avis. I'm retired. I don't work anymore, but I worked for well over 50 years. And the biggest problem I had with most of the leaders I came in contact with is didn't know how to get out of the way. So I was very glad to hear what you had to say about that, because I think that is important. You can give everybody all the advice in the world, but if you don't get out of the way and let them, think about the advice and take the route they want, you're not doing your job.
Thank you.
Oh,
how about one more?
And by the way, I am a user of Pampered Chef, and I have met Mr. Hill.
Oh, how terrific.
Yeah, so the only one I don't know is Mr. Hodges.
Very good.
Got time for one more. Does anybody else have something to share?
Yeah, it's from Carl's group. One of the things that I've admired is a strong word, but really appreciated in some of the people I've worked under is when they understand, I don't want to call it asset allocation, but more so talent identification. So you have a bunch of people, you have your coworkers and everyone that you're working with, and you all come in, you're all doing a task, and it's more so assessment of where people are and diversifying what they're good at or using that skill. I've had cases where we're all just doing X, Y, and we share that, and cases where something and our leader identifies that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate all of the comments, actually. So those are very much in alignment with the conversations I've had as well, talking about good communication, talent management, listening, actively listening, being able to cast vision. I heard words in other conversations that I had preparing for today that were passionate, humble, willing to learn, leaders that help identify strengths or redirect me to resources to expand my strengths. They coach me in private. And one that was very interesting is that the leader knows something about the area of work to be accomplished and sets reasonable expectations. So thank you guys for participating very much. I really appreciate that. Now, do you think as you go back to those opening comments that your answers logically link back to the need to develop the next generation of great leaders and a culture that favors individual fulfillment? Do you have in your own mind examples of leaders that will help shape the next generation? I hope you see yourself in that group of leaders. So Aiden, I think we'll go ahead to the next slide. And again, thanks everyone for participating. Take a moment and look at my hypothesis. At some point during each day, you're the leader, but you're also the follower. And in some instances, you're the one that's in the way. So we're going to talk about that. See, your job, my job, is to be self-aware and always assessing what our role is, then doing our best in whatever role we find ourselves in. But like I said, if you're in that third category, simply in the way, you really have your work cut out for you. But I'm going to leave everyone with some action steps today So let's dig in and get started on the second half of today's presentation. So let's start with that in the way idea. See, the really unsettling nature of the third situation, you're in the way, is that you might not even realize that you're the roadblock. You may not realize that you are the primary reason for much of the negative reality that you experience each day. So let's self-assess. Everybody take a deep breath. Are you feeling uncomfortable with this conversation? Can you feel a little bit of tension or frustration or anger creeping in around the edges of your consciousness? Perhaps you might be feeling a little threatened by the suggestion that it might be you. Has that fight or flight response started to kick in? See, the fact of the matter is there may be things that you have within your control to change, but you're just not willing to make the change. Now remember, I said I wanted to get your attention and captivate you and instigate and prod you into making a change. So if you're sensing any of those feelings that I just described or the emotions that I just mentioned, listen for the verbs. I invite you to write down exactly what you're feeling and experiencing so you can acknowledge those feelings. Now, I want you to identify a trusted mentor or a friend to discuss the feelings or emotions that you've experienced, and then establish a plan to resolve them. See, corporate America oftentimes doesn't want us to talk about the emotional side of our beings. But what I can tell you is that if we don't deal with how we feel, then we're going to be stuck, and we could be in the way of what we're trying to accomplish personally, professionally, on teams, in our families. And so kind of settle into this idea and this challenge that I'm setting in front of you, because there are those things that we have control over that we're just not willing to tackle because it's hard. So here's an example. You are unwilling to let others off the hook. You know what that is? Letting somebody off the hook? That's forgiveness. Or some of you may have a death grip on some offense that occurred in the past. You know what offense really is? That's bitterness. So you're actually unwilling to seek help from the leaders in your life because it's uncomfortable to deal with those issues. Now, this doesn't apply to any of you because you're here, you're taking the steps. But we all know somebody like this, don't we? You've got that person in your mind probably already. So as their leader or a person on their team, this is pretty important information for you. See, my purpose is to equip you with a new point of view, so when you leave today, you take action steps to help someone else or get the help you need to break through to a new level of leadership. So today, you are equipped to approach things differently. So here's the pop quiz. You ready? When was the last time you asked your manager, a supervisor, or a trusted friend for candid feedback about something very specific? Was it your last performance review? Did you skip the last meeting with your mentor? Do you have a mentor? Was it maybe about a presentation you made earlier this week? When's the last time you asked somebody for candid feedback? Well, I'll tell you when I did recently. And it made such an impression on me that I can tell you the date exactly. It was October 7th, 2017. My friend Catherine and I had agreed to meet at my mom's place in North Georgia. Picture the most picturesque location in the foothills of the Appalachians. It was just meant to be a girls' getaway weekend to connect, to relax, and to just be. Now, here's a point of interest. My mom is going to be 86 years old on her birthday. She's active, alert. She still drives herself to the store and church, but she's also stubborn, self-deprecating, and has a preference for listening to those she perceives as an authority on a subject, like healthcare, real estate, financial planning, rather than listening to my sisters and me. If anybody are in the group with me with aging parents, you know what I'm talking about. Now, I should let you know that my sisters and I have done reasonably well in our professional careers, and we have meaningful, relevant experience from which we offer our mom guidance. But she wants to listen to somebody else. So here's my point. I said to Catherine, I'm trying so hard to be patient with mom, but sometimes I think my tone of voice isn't always kind or compassionate. What do you think? Well, when she recovered from choking on her wine, I might just let you know it was a very nice petite Verdot. When she was done choking and laughing at me, I had my answer about my tone when it comes to interacting with my mom. But here's the takeaway. Note takers, write this down. Those of us that desire leadership to be part of our attributes in any area of our lives, we must be willing to humble ourselves, to make ourselves vulnerable, and be willing to receive criticism and then take action on the information given. Does it occur to you how unusual this is? To have 2 or 3 people in our lives that we are willing to be that vulnerable with in a culture that desires individuality and self-gain. So, we have a challenge in whatever role we happen to be in any given moment, and so we've got to face that challenge head on. It's my point of view, again, that the challenge is to be self-aware. And here's something that John Maxwell said. You can see the screen. Take a moment and read that. So I have met John Maxwell. I actually met him at the 2016 NMA National Conference in New Orleans. And as it turns out, John Maxwell is mentor to Chris Hodges. So if you want to change and grow, then you must know yourself and accept who you are before you can start building. So that's easy, nothing to it, right? Know who you are and accept who you are. How's that working for you guys out there? So here's what I think. Whether you're leading or following, self-awareness is key in order to maximize the value you bring to any project you're working on. If you're the leader, you'll want to provide direction, delegate, follow up, be available for questions, and provide clarification. On top of that, you may also have reports to prepare for presentations to leaders above you, so now you're a follower. Conversely, as a traditional follower, you'll have tasks to complete, deadlines to meet, reports to submit. On top of all of that, you have to manage personal appointments, family matters, continuing education, NMA chapter business, attending meetings, grocery shopping, preparing meals, carving out time to watch your favorite show, maintaining friendships, and beginning to plan holiday travel. Yes, Thanksgiving is next week if no one's told you it's next week. Now, how's the noise level in your head? It's pretty noisy in mine. And I'm the one that's trying to inspire you to invest in your own leadership potential by understanding how necessary it is to be self-aware. Are you inspired? Aiden, I wish it was unmuted so I could hear that laughter, because this might not necessarily feel that inspirational. So let's take a deep breath. If you're in a room with other people, look at the person to your right and say, Lynn is absolutely nuts. Go ahead. Now look at the person on your left and say, it's gonna be okay. And if you're in a room by yourself, make yourself a note to call Steve Bailey later and tell him how much you enjoyed today's webinar. I know he wants to hear from you. So here's the good news, guys. This is a process. And today, by receiving this information, your willingness to consider a new point of view, and by agreeing to take small incremental steps towards change, you've already started. The process has already begun. The next challenge in the leadership equation is to keep the momentum of this webinar going beyond the time that we have shared today. And oh, by the way, not starting, doing nothing beyond this webinar, beyond listening, and then getting back to the same thing that you've always done, getting back on that merry-go-round of your life, is really acquiescence. And it says, I'd rather stay where I am than to change. And that, my friends, puts you squarely in the third category. So let me just make it real easy. Get out of the way. Think about it and let that settle just a little bit. But again, as promised, I'm going to give you some steps that you can take yourself or you can take to work with others that are in that third category. All right. Here are literal steps that you can take. Look at the person, yourself, or someone that you're working with. What's going on? Are there extenuating circumstances, family issues, medical issues? There's uncertainty. But remember, this one will cost you, and it will be expensive, because this one takes time, and time is the most valuable commodity that we have. You might need to have a conversation. There's another investment. Do you see that there's a cost to leadership? You invest in yourself. You invest in others. You invest in your organization. You might have to ask questions and assess information. Maybe there's just no connection to the job at hand other than a paycheck. Maybe the value and the vision of the organization or the project isn't clear. Perhaps there's something going on within the team. Is there something going on in the cube environment? If any of you sit in, long rows of cubes, you understand what I'm talking about. Maybe you or someone you know is just living under a lie that somebody said or told you, and you've never recovered from that. Maybe you've just been told, that's stupid, be quiet. And you believed that, and you've always given authority to that, and so that's what's keeping you from moving to the next level. See, there's patterns of behavior that might be surfacing. You might just need to right-size the requirements of what's going on. You might have to adjust some things. You might need to take a class. You might need to ask for help. We're back to humility again. And in some instances, if you are a leader, a decision maker, you may need to just follow the process and document. Because as Jack Welch would tell us, if a person's not bringing value, certainly in the workplace, we may need to move them into another situation or circumstance. In a personal relationship, of course, you might need to seek help from professionals or others that have walked the path before you. Do not discount what something that was said to you years and years and years ago, maybe when you were in middle school or high school, that was said to you that's just not true. So very quickly, I want to tell you the story of Billy Hornsby. Billy was a really bright kid, incredible talent. He was genius level. He was in a small Mississippi community, and he was probably in the 8th grade or so. And the teacher said, Billy, I want you to work this problem and come up to the board and do the problem. So as Billy was walking towards the board, it was a math problem. It was fairly complicated, but Billy did the problem in his head, and when he got to the board, he simply wrote the answer down. And the teacher said, Billy, you're wrong. And he said, no, ma'am, I'm not wrong. That is the correct answer. And she said, no, you're wrong because you didn't follow the process. And as Billy was sitting down, she looked right at him and she said, Billy, you'll never amount to anything. And that stayed with him for a long time. See, Billy checked out that day. but he didn't check out of school. He still kept going, but he found himself believing that he would never amount to anything. So Billy also happened to be musically talented. So you know what he did? He started playing music in bars, and he met a young lady, and they found themselves expecting. And so now Billy is thinking, I've got a family on the way, and I need to do something more than play in bars. So now he's 17, 18 years old, and so he goes, like most folks in that part of Mississippi do, down in the Baton Rouge area. He goes to Exxon and applies for a job. Now, Billy doesn't expect to do well because he's been told and he believed that he won't amount to anything. But in a few days, the phone rings, and it's the fella from Exxon saying, Mr. Hornsby, we'd sure like it if you'd come in. We'd like to talk to you. And he said, why can't you just tell me I'm not good enough on the phone? And they said, no, sir, would you please come down? If you could be here at 10 o'clock tomorrow, we'd like to talk to you. And so Billy went in expecting to hear what he'd always heard, that he wouldn't amount to anything. But guess what? That's not what they said. In fact, what they said was, Mr. Hornsby, no one has ever scored this high on our placement exam. Mr. Hornsby, you can be anything you want to be. And you know what? It reversed the lie that he was told as a young boy. Now here's the rest of the story. That little baby that Billy and his wife had turns out to be Tammy. And Tammy happens to be Chris Hodges' wife. So now you know the rest of the story. But here's the thing. Self-awareness means that you need to be in tune with who you are and take some time and invest in yourself, maybe over this holiday season, to assess whether you're living under a lie, and then to reverse that lie simply by restating it to what is true. And let me speak that over each one of you. You can be anything you want to be. And so let me give you those action steps. And this is going to be super easy because you guys already know this. You've got all your senses right there in front of you. Sight. Define your vision and goals. Dream big dreams and then convert them into goals, and then repeat. Use your ears. Listen to that still small voice. Find a mentor. Be a mentor. Just ask some questions. And what about smell? Let me tell you, life is passing by quickly. So take time to stop and smell the roses. And if something smells bad, figure out where it's coming from and clean it up or get rid of it. How about taste? Try new things. Paragliding for me, trust me, running off the side of that perfectly good mountain was a brand new experience. Try a new recipe. Take a different route home. Maybe it's time for some of you to think about a new career. And finally, touch. Be compassionate. Every person you encounter is going through something. Speak words of life and encouragement over them, and always offer to help. All right. I'm going to leave you with a picture. And this is one more of my photos. This is Blue Water Bay, Florida. This is about 4 miles from my home in Northwest Florida. But there's a quote there that I'd like you to see as well. I know that you can read it. I know you know who Jack Welch is. But here's my desire. This is my dream for each of you, is that you will become a great leader or a greater leader. See, I'm convinced that if we, those participating in this webinar, will continue to pursue with passion our personal leadership goals, we will influence the current and next generation of leaders. This is what excites me. This is what fuels me. This is what keeps bringing me back to NMA, the Leadership Development Organization, the passionate pursuit of excellence to benefit our families, our friends, our workplaces, and the communities where each of us lives and works. So I am Lynn Schneider, and I am a leader. Thank you so much for your time and attention today. Are there any questions or comments?
Lynn, this is Avis. I have a comment. You were talking about one of the steps being have a conversation. Earlier, I said I've worked for 60 years. And what I am finding in these later years is it's getting more and more difficult to have conversations and get people to talk about their feelings because technology is getting in the way. As you said earlier, we communicate in sound bites, using emojis. I'm finding it's getting more and more difficult to sit down with someone and have an honest, serious conversation that leads into how they feel about a particular situation. And if you can't get them to talk about how they feel about it, it's even more difficult to get them to address the situation and how to overcome it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And I think that's one of the key elements of leaders of today and tomorrow is the ability to communicate with a generation of folks that haven't been trained in the art of debate, have not been trained to be in touch with their feelings and emotions. And so that is going to be a great opportunity for leaders of today and tomorrow. You're absolutely right. We are in agreement.
And it takes a different skill set than what some current leaders have.
And don't you think that's the perfect reason why we should actively participate in our chapter meetings locally is because that helps us with that dialogue to build those relationships and to have those conversations. As a matter of fact, in Huntsville, we're going to be looking at having a working general membership meeting where we practice some conflict resolution, or we even practice structured interviews so that we know how to interview for a job so that we can go to the next level. That communication is key, the listening part and the articulating, verbalizing part of the conversation.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time mentoring at-risk students. And the thing that I find I have to concentrate on the most is how they should present themselves for an interview. You know, not only how to talk and how to conduct themselves, but how they look walking in the door. Because they have no idea, you know, how the way they look is going to impact how a leader conducts the interview.
Yeah, thank you very much. Did anyone else have any questions or comments?
Lynn, this is Steve Bailey. I think one of the takeaways from your session today, which is excellent, by the way, thank you. I'm curious to what extent in your organization, and really to everybody else that's listening in, maybe they can chime in, there's so much on everybody's plate. To what degree are people being held accountable for the development of others? I remember 100 years ago dating a young lady who was a surgery resident, and I remember Carol said to me, you know, we're never taught in med school anything about bedside manner. You either pick it up on your own or you may never get it unless you have a mentor. So
and they're still not teaching it.
And I wonder if when you fast forward to the workplace today, is there time in your development for someone to look over your shoulder and say, are you developing people in your organization to take over? Can anyone comment to that?
Well, the example of bedside manner of doctors is certainly true. I had this conversation with my new doctor just 2 weeks ago, and he said, no, he said, they don't teach us that in medical school. They expect us to develop it on our own over time. And he said, I don't have anybody to talk to it about. And I said, well, try talking to some of your patients.
Well, we've got a lot of people on the line from many different organizations here. Anybody want to chip in?
Quick reminder, if you're dialed in by phone, it's *6 to unmute your microphone, or you can use the icon in the lower left if you're on a computer.
Okay, Lynn, I'll toss it back to you. What do you
Sure.
find in your company? Are you all held accountable for developing others?
There is some accountability. I know that we've recently had the employee survey, and managers are part of their business goals and objectives is to establish action plans, so to speak, and their employees' development is part of that. However, the accountability to that is often placed on the employee, where each of us is responsible to determine if we want to establish mentor-mentee relationships, if we would like to pursue any certifications or continuing education opportunities, and then to what degree we would like to participate in resource groups, of which NMA is considered one of those resource types of groups to build those relationships and networking opportunities. Yeah, so I would say the measure is, or the percentage is relatively low in that accountability to pursue those leadership relationships and skill growing opportunities.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Lynn, I'll let you and Aiden wrap up, but let me speak on behalf of, I know a lot of people. You gave us some good food for thought. You do a nice job of telling people how important self-awareness is. It's an important part of being an empathetic leader, looking around, understanding how you are impacting others, or even asking, are you impacting others one way or the other? So you've given us a lot of food for thought today, and you've done such a good job that I'm going to have you back in 2018 doing something else.
Fantastic. Thank you for your kindness, and I look forward to seeing everyone at the next big event at the NMA. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well done, Lynn.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn, and thank all of you for attending today. It's been a great webinar and a great year of webinars, and we hope to see all of you again in January for our next one. Have a great day, everybody, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.